Welcome back to Behind the Checkout. I'm John Lunn, founder and CEO of Gravy, and your host for today's episode, Wallet Wars 2.0. We're diving into a hot topic that's shaping the future of commerce: digital wallets. From Apple Pay and Google Pay to Click to Pay and PayPal, we're seeing a new wave of competition that's redefining how we pay, who we trust, and what merchants need to prioritize to stay ahead. To help unpack this wallet war and what it means to businesses, I'm excited to be joined by someone who's been right at the heart of it, Steve Klebe. With decades of experience driving innovation at companies like CyberSource, Google, and Stripe, Steve now lends his expertise as a board member and advisor to several forward-thinking companies in the payment space, and is known as the Kevin Bacon of payments. Everywhere you go, someone is connected to Steve Klebe. Steve, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, John. It's a pleasure to be here as always. And this is such an interesting topic. You can't wake up any morning and open up, one of the various newsletters or blogs or whatever. And there was, just this morning, there was a click to pay announcement, out of Europe. So it's, I'm sure it confuses a lot of people. So it's a thrill to, get the opportunity to talk about it. I was actually looking back. My first experience with wallets was in 1993 when I was at a company called Cybercash 32 years ago. And we had a wallet, but it was a thick wallet. The consumer had to get a floppy disk. If any of you remember those, and the alternative, if we didn't send them a disk, was to do a download on 36 baud modems, 36K baud modems. And, it took like an hour and a half to install the wallet. Needless to say, that didn't go anywhere.
I think one of the earliest ones I saw, Steve, was the Britney Spears fan club. I don't know if you knew that. They actually were one of the first groups to issue a NFC reader that you use your Britney Spears fan club card to tap it against your USB NFC reader and get into the fan club and buy Britney Spears equipment. So you never knew that, but
Well, I'm glad to say I missed the whole NFC craze.
okay.
Or, yeah, the NFT craze.
Very good. So let's kick off. What's really driving the surge in digital wallet adoption? Are we seeing true consumer preference or just better tech placement at checkout?
I would say that we're seeing a little bit of both. I think that the tech companies, whether it be Gravy or Stripe or whatever, have put a fair amount of work into trying to intelligently not only surface the wallets that are relevant, but literally position them in such a way that the most interesting, wallets, the most appealing wallets will show up, in the top of the list. Um, but at the same time, I think consumers, you know, uh, some are set in their ways and have preferences. I personally have an Android phone. I, of course, worked on Google Pay, and my default is Google Pay. And I like it because I can use it both at the physical point of sale, as well as online in almost universally. Um, but there's a lot of competition now, for the eyeballs and for the clicks. So I think it's a moving target, and it will continue to be a moving target, for some time to come.
Is this a UX battle or is this something to do with just what you happen to have in your pocket? I mean, or is it just convenience? Are customers actually loyal? I mean, you're loyal to Google, but you work there and you have a Google phone. Is there customer loyalty? I mean, PayPal's been around a long time. Is PayPal still used a lot because people are used to it? What is doing this? I mean, what is driving this?
I think it is, again, there's probably no simple answers to any of these questions because for any given segment of the population, it's going the answer is going to vary. So some of it is just sheer inertia. Like you said, PayPal had been sort of the poster child for alternative payments, as we used to call them. The sexier term became digital wallets. But they owned the market, and especially on desktop, they continue to own the market. When Google Pay and Apple Pay came along, and Samsung Pay to a slightly lesser extent, um, and the battle kind of pivoted. They lost a little bit of their mojo, but of course they've been working very hard to get some of it back. But then just when that happens, you have things like Link from Stripe or Shop Pay, from Shopify. Um, and, you know, and this new thing pays that early warning has built on behalf of the large issuing banks. So, it is the plethora of choices that consumers are being given, and why any particular population chooses to use one of them, and whether or not they stay with it. There's a lot of, like it used to be in the early days of Google Wallet slash Google Pay. We would do deals with merchants to get people to adopt. Um, I don't see an awful lot of those, happening today. Um, Companies like Visa and MasterCard, when they were heavy in the wallet game, of course, I guess they still are with click to pay, although, you know, heard recently that, that's pretty much, been wound down in the US and it's mainly a European, play at this point. Um, they would spend millions of dollars, you know, uh, I'll say bribing merchants do the integration work and then to feature, the wallet. And look, this is not a wallet comment, but recently the news was that Visa was going to pay, um, you know, was it App? Yeah, Visa was going to pay Apple like $1 billion or something just to become the brand, um, for the next generation of the Apple Pay, card. So a big motivation, of course, all the narratives talk about why this is all so good for the consumer. Um, but realistically, the consumer has more than enough choices already. This is really a battle about disintermediation, and who owns the customer experience. Um, and what data can be extracted, from the sequence of events, and then how that data can be used. Again, this battle is gonna wage on, you know, uh, long past, you know, when I'm gonna be caring about it. It's just it's a never ending quest to be the brand similar to the whole top of wallet discussion. The amount of energy that gets put into, being top of wallet. Um, and of course, the the Apple Pays and Google's Pays of the world make it really easy for the consumer with one flick of the finger to switch which is the top of wallet, card. Um, and of course, the card brands hate that because they spend all this energy trying to get people to, pick their card in the hopes that once they've picked it, inertia will take over and they will continue to use it. No different than like Discover Card with their promotions that you get, 3% off if you shop at Costco, you know, in the hopes that you'll just make that, that'll then become the card you use, every day. So, there's a lot of money at stake. And anytime there's a lot of money at stake, there's going to be sort of endless engagement and creativity to try to, alter behavior.
Yeah, I think what's different this time, and I was heavily involved in what I would call Wallet Wars 1.0, which was sort of the V.me and whatever the MasterCard one was called, and PayPal, and then Google and Apple came into the game a bit later. And it was very much a case of buying preference really at the merchant side. So how did you persuade a merchant to put you on the website? And the answer was give them some money. That is what it came down to. And that's when, merchants coming to me today and say, look, what should we do? I'm like, first thing to do is put your hand out and see who gives you that extra money. And then after that, like, then consider actually what your customers want probably first before all of that. But I think what's very different for me in this version of what it was is customer choice is kind of being taken away. Like if you go to a website that is, Shopify based, you don't even get a chance really to decide it. If you've used, Shopify Pay, it instantly kicks you into the Shopify world. Off you go. And I think Stripe does a similar thing. And frankly, Click to Pay does a similar thing as well. So it's almost as though the choice has been taken away from the consumer a little bit. I mean, you can go out of your way and force yourself back into it, but we're all lazy. We're going to do what is the quickest and easiest way to get out to it. But it does raise an interesting question for the merchant. Like, how do you then participate? Like, if you've added all of them to your website, what takes over? What rules and how do you control that? Because ultimately, you don't want to be giving control away to what could be a more expensive payment method.
Yeah, I actually had that happen to me just yesterday. I got a electronic invoice text from my dentist, and I clicked through to it, and they were using Stripe, which was I knew that. I don't think anybody generally would have been obvious to them, but literally the because I've used Link before, and because the cookie was on my phone, it just defaulted to that, and I didn't even bother really looking to see if I had another option, um, and, I'm sure there was other options there, but it used to be, not so long ago, that the very first option was, you know, starting to fill out a checkout form. Um, and of course, that's where Chrome autofill and Safari autofill and Edge autofill, tried to intervene, but those experiences were not great. They never quite 100% filled out the form, etc. And usually, just below that, there would be like, this sort of array of, icons, that you could, choose from. And of course, when I was at Google, one of the things I did was I worked with companies like Stripe, like Audion, to make Google Pay a default solution, so that the merchant didn't have to opt into it. They could opt out, but they didn't have to opt in. And if the consumer was on their Android phone, it was not only automatically present, it became the primary option. But of course, now that Stripe is pushing Link, it's still there, but it has taken a lesser stature. So yeah, I mean that just goes to show you, how important this is to fill in the blank. Visa, MasterCard, Discover, the big card issuers, you name it, PayPal, PayPal obviously in terms of trying to compete. I can't remember the brand name for this experience. You probably know it. Oh, that fat. Yeah, right. Um, so that's their attempt to compete with how natural and embedded, you know, the Apple Pay, Google Pay experiences were. Um, of course, it was interesting the experience I had with Link yesterday. Um, Frankly, again, some of this is biased because of my work experience and the like, and just having been at this for 32 years. Um, I still would have preferred to just use Google Pay, um, because I had to wait. It didn't take more than a nanosecond, but I had to wait for this OTP, to come, into my phone, and then I had to manually type it in. I don't know if the autofill of the OTP was actually there. The other big thing that's happening is the whole passkey experience,
Yeah.
which potentially has implications, in this as well.
Yeah, so let's move on to that, and let's particularly in the context of click to pay. So many people in the US won't really know click to pay and what it is, but outside the US, it's getting huge traction. Firstly, in Australia, which is kind of where their launch market was, and now in Europe. So we're starting to see it becoming the payment a payment wallet, whatever you want to describe it, or a new way to pay outside North America. And I think from past experience, eventually US bends after many years of resistance. Like eventually it bends to it. I think click to pay, if so people don't know in the audience, is a standard that has been developed by the main card companies. And really the aim here is to get rid of guest checkout. That's the real goal of it. So when you go to a checkout page, um, it will recognize you, and it will, instead of asking you to type in all of your details, your credit card number, expiry date, it will basically show you all of your cards, the last 4, 6 digits of your cards, whether they're an Amex, Visa, or MasterCard. And then using a passkey, which is already installed on your devices, will automatically make the payment. So you have no typing, nothing to put in place. Will run on your current acquiring fees, deals that you got with the acquirers, and process the payment completely seamlessly. So it's not really a wallet because no money is being stored anywhere, but it is a better, improved checkout experience, and it runs on the native rails. So when it comes to other wallets, which essentially are sitting on the same rails, you would presume economically it makes sense, right? Because you're not, there's no extra party involved in it. Um, doesn't this kill the other wallets eventually?
Well, again, I think there's so much motivation, whether it's direct economic motivation or ego motivation, um, that uh, people are never going to give up trying to carve out a portion of this market, for themselves. And again, if you're Stripe, you want to get a lot of people using Link because that helps you convince merchants, to choose Stripe, as your PSP. Um, and so that's way more important to them, than a lot of other things, on their priority list. And of course, if you're Visa and MasterCard, um, you know, and someone uses Click to Pay instead of Apple Pay, then the 15 basis points that, gets shaved off and gets sent over to Apple doesn't happen. That's the same thing with Link. And those 15 basis points have added up to some real money for our friends, at Apple. And, side note, Google never got to participate in that, arrangement. So they don't get anything. Of course, everyone would then say, yeah, well, Google's, using, the data, and so they're getting something out of it. But yeah, I think the other, a key point for me, and again, I try to remove myself as the person and think about this in terms of like the general population. Um, but any wallet that is strictly online and doesn't also support, in store, I think is, it'll get, again, with enough promotion, with enough, forced placement, positioning, and the like, they can all get some amount of, traction. Um, but I don't think any of these new wallets, who would struggle big time, um, not only to get ubiquitous acceptance even online, but they would struggle big time to operate uh, in any sort of efficient manner, in store, because that the hill you have to climb to work in a NFC environment is extremely high, expensive, etc. So I'm a big fan of the omni-channel, experience. And so some of these other wallets, for whatever reason, will carve out niches here and there. Um, I was amazed, during my time at Stripe, I was amazed because I would personally, I was not a big Link fan. Um, but I knew that by default, just like Shop Pay, by the sheer mass of merchants that they have on their platforms, they're gonna get some adoption because, at the end of the day, the average consumer just doesn't care, you know, about the only thing they do care about is nobody wants to sit there and type in their credit card numbers. I don't think most consumers, they might say they care about security, but they care much more about convenience than they care about security.
I
The
was gonna I was gonna bring that out as the next one. Really, the big selling point of our early days of PayPal was this is more secure. This is keeping your details safe. This is not sharing anything with people outside the environment that you don't want to share. So you know where your data is. You know how safe it is. Is that true anymore, or is this just wrapping risk in a different, shinier wrapper?
um, well, I think the industry really cares about, we know from all the effort it's put into PCI compliance and the like, that the industry really cares about, preventing fraud. And in the age of AI, the crooks are just getting smarter and smarter and smarter. So, these things really matter. Some consumers, care about it, and again, the phenomenon here in the US is different than outside the US, where here in the US, the consumer has virtually no direct exposure other than maybe being inconvenienced if their card number is stolen, but they don't typically take any losses. Whereas in many places in Europe, if you allow your card to be compromised, you'll actually eat the loss. So it matters a lot more, and this is one of the reasons why the predecessor to Click to Pay, you know, um, you know, got more traction in places like, Australia and Europe, because people have more responsibility than they have here. So as long as there's these 100% security, guarantees, the average consumer, you know, um, doesn't think about it all that much.
So based on that, I mean, look, it's there's a cost behind these things, right? There's a cost per transaction. There's sort of at least a perception in some places that the PayPal, for example, is more expensive than going directly. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not true. But it's becoming quite hard to differentiate like the between the wallets. So what we're starting to see is the wallet's adding more and more functionality. If you've logged into your PayPal account recently, it feels more like a sort of, I don't know, Yahoo advertising platform than it does a wallet now, because it's full of adverts, it's full of promotions, vouchers, coupons. And then you've seen in PayPal particularly and other wallets starting to add, I think some of the Stripe announcements recently starting to add stable coins or crypto into the wallet. Are the wallets having to change? Are they having to become super apps? Like they look jealously at China and the super apps that you got out there. Is that happening, or is that wishful thinking?
Well, I think it's kind of happening. Uh, Different approaches, but it's happening. The question is, at the end of the day, will that actually be the winning strategy? Um, and so I was thinking also about BNPLs and how those are being woven in, to the wallet experience, whether it's Google, Apple, Stripe, etc. Um, so, I do, uh, you know, I'm a big believer in, like, simplicity, um, and, I remember, PayPal, for example, has been through multiple phases of this, they tried maybe a decade ago, I don't remember if this was directly trying to compete with the mobile first apps. Um, but they created an entire restaurant, a system where they were featuring restaurants and there'd be like 5% off deals and things.
Mhm.
Um, and honestly, I felt that all it did was, I just wanted to pay, I had already decided what I wanted to buy, and I just wanted to check out and get back to my life. And, they were putting all of this other stuff in my way. Um, and so I think there is a catch 22 with the concept of a super app. I think you should be allowed to opt in to those experiences. Or at least be given the opportunity to opt out of those experiences. I know one of my favorite sayings is opting in is the killer of all good ideas. But, to your point of what seems to have worked very well, coming out of Asia, um, those wallets are really like social networks. The wallet functionality is like it was just one of the excuses for why you would have it on your device. But I think it became secondary in many cases. And if you go back and you look at, why is Google spending tens, maybe over the years, hundreds of millions of dollars, investing in Google Pay and all of its, different iterations? Well, you know, you most people pay for things once, twice, 3, 5 times a day. It's a part of your everyday life, and they have motivation to be part of your everyday life.
So that kind of brings us to sort of the last question, which is the future of wallets. Like, I think interesting enough, I've been spending a lot of time in agentic commerce over the last couple of weeks, and we have a separate podcast on this area that's coming through. Um, One of the trends in agentic commerce seems to be, I've seen 3 companies recently have created agentic wallets, right? So it feels a little bit like PayPal 1.0, but for agentic commerce right now. It's based around convenience and keeping a firewall between, agents, etc. So that seems to be one space where maybe the wallets are making a little bit of a comeback, or I don't know how you want to describe it. But what is the future? Where is the future of these wallets? Is it biometrics? Is it AI, agentic? Is it loyalty, or is it something completely different? Where do we go with these things?
Well, again, not to sound too boring, but I think it's all of the above. I don't, you know, as an angel investor, I wouldn't invest in a company that was bringing an agentic wallet to market, because I think it's more of a feature than a company. But of course, people are going to try. And So, I think the battle is going to rage on. I think, um, you know, everything you just mentioned, stronger authentication, yet balanced with even more convenience, is a key. Um, I don't believe that this super app concept is going to take over the world. Um, the other thing that always pops to mind is just you know the the different segments of populations that exist, and how long it takes to get anything to critical mass, um, and how much it costs um, to get acceptance in a broad, because I know personally, because I worked on it directly. I built the program at Google to get over 200 PSPs globally to accept, Google Pay. And every single one of those was a negotiation and a technical integration. Um, and not many companies can afford, to support, that kind of effort. Um, and now the other thing that you talked about biometrics, but the other thing that's happening is identity in general. And that ties to the whole agentic, without extremely, secure but yet convenient consumer authentication, seamlessly built into these things, um, we could end up with a real disaster on our hands. And, I know that my demographic is not the ones who are going to be the target audience to let some bot, um, you know, go shopping for them and complete the transaction. So I think there's going to have to be, there'll be just like there was around crypto 10 years ago. There'll be a craze like we're experiencing right now. And everybody, just like every single company launching today has AI in their name. Um, the next phase is everyone's going to have the word agentic, in their name, and people will see whether it sticks or not. Um, and so these are all tools that are going to ultimately have some impact. But if they are effective, they're going to actually have to sort of blend into the background.
Anyway, Steve, really appreciate the time. Appreciate being here. Your insights, as per usual, highly valuable. You'll see Steve everywhere you go in payments, or you probably know someone that knows Steve. But once again, thanks, Steve, and thanks for your insights.
All right, take care, John. Good seeing you as always.